Welcome, brethren, to Squaring the Circle, a Masonic podcast. In this episode, we talk to Worshipful Brother John Muise, who has spent a little bit of time studying the Masonic certificate. The Masonic certificate is something that is given to each Master Mason, and there's so much imagery on there that we don't really typically spend a lot of time trying to understand. John goes into the Masonic certificate, this is mine, and describes what each element means. So enjoy this, brethren. This is Worshipful Brother John Muise discussing the Masonic certificate.
Hi, I'm Worshipful Brother John Muise, past master of Temple Lodge number 525 and current member of Peterborough Lodge number 155. I was scanning the Grand Lodge of Canada, Province of Ontario website and came across a great article. It's called Your Grand Lodge Certificate. We all have one if we're a master, if we're a Mason. And I'm betting that very few of us have actually looked closely at it to see what's on it, because I was surprised by how much detail it goes on. So anyways, I hope you enjoy this. It's called Your Grand Lodge Certificate. Now, we're all aware of the allegorical significance of the furniture, ornaments, and jewels that we ritualize in our lodges. And we may even recall the significance of the tracing boards. But the question I pose to you is, are you aware of the tremendous history and significance that is presented to you in a pictorial manner on your Grand Lodge certificate? Now, this is not merely a piece of paper that informs you and all others who view it that you're a Mason, but it also proclaims a history of our craft. If you would look at your certificate as I relate this following story to you, I'm sure that you will always view your certificate in the future as not just a piece of paper, but rather as an historical document. At the top at the top center of the certificate, you will see several scenes that are enclosed within a floral border. If you look closely at this border, you'll see entwined among the maple leaves, thistles, roses, and shamrocks. This represents the fact that our ancient fraternity had its roots in Scotland, the thistle, England, the rose, and Ireland, the shamrock, and crossed the ocean to join hands with Canada as represented by the maple leaves. Within the border is the emblem worn by the Grand Master, the all-seeing eye. This emblem, known as the rayon, is the symbol of the divinity. It is often one of the first items built into a new edifice, for the belief was that this eye would watch over the workmen at all times, thus ensuring maximum effort and greatest skills. From this emblem, you can see the rays of brilliant light shining forth over the whole of creation, reminding us that the Creator is watching over us at all times. Below the eye, you'll see the royal coat of arms of England that consists of the lion and the unicorn supporting the royal shield, all surmounted by the liege's crown. The shield displays 3 lions representing England in the first and fourth quarters, the Lion of Scotland in the second quarter, and the Harp of Ireland in the third quarter. This is again a reminder of both our heritage and the allegiance we owe to the authority that guides us. Immediately below this shield, you will see 3 scenes enclosed in ellipses, and these were the Great Seal of the Province of Canada during the period from 1841 to 1867 up until Confederation. This seal was adopted at the Union of Upper Canada and Lower Canada under the title Province of Canada. In the center are 2 maidens representing Upper and Lower Canada, and their being arm in arm is meant to symbolize the loving unity of the 2 Canadas. To the left of these maidens is the Great Seal of Lower Canada, in use prior to the amalgamation. This scene is said to be a portrayal of Quebec City as viewed from the St. Lawrence, with a church in the background and ships of sail on the St. Lawrence. To the upper right of the maidens is the old seal of Upper Canada, of the same period as that on the left. A notable Mason, Brother John Graves Simcoe, who was also the first Lieutenant Governor of Canada, designed this seal. It consists of a sword, an anchor, and an Indian peace pipe mounted above two cornucopias. Presumably, the sword represented the armed forces, the anchor, the navy and trade routes, and the peace pipe, the relationship of the native people of the land and their brethren. The cornucopia would represent the abundance of natural resources and the bountiful game of the land. In the top right-hand corner, you will see the lower quadrant of the old Union Jack, and to its left, the Royal Crown of England. To the right of the seal, we see the might of Niagara Falls, probably the most identifiable scene in Ontario. It was near here that Masonry was introduced into Canada and is the home of the oldest lodge in Ontario. It was a group of brethren from Niagara who started the movement, resulting in the formation of the Grand Lodge of Canada at a meeting in Hamilton, Ontario. This meeting was held in July 1855 and ultimately resulted in the independence of Canadian Masonry from its mother lodge in England. The independent Grand Lodge of Canada was formed on the 10th of October 1855, and the Grand Lodge is still situated on King Street in Hamilton to this day. To the left of the seal, we see a drawing of what we believe to be Hamilton as it viewed from Burlington Beach. In the background, we can see Hamilton Mountains rising above the bay, and in the foreground, we can see a beaver that unerringly is a symbol connected to Canada in the minds of the people of the world. Thus, in 1855, the Grand Lodge of Canada came into being. Note, it was just called the Grand Lodge of Canada and nothing else. Why then do we call ourselves the Grand Lodge of Canada in the province of Ontario? Sometime during 1867, Quebec formed its own Grand Lodge of Quebec. We now had an odd situation of having a Grand Lodge of Canada and a Grand Lodge of Quebec, both in the country of Canada. Much discussion took place in Ontario, and in 1887, the Grand Lodge of Canada passed a resolution that added the words "in the province of Ontario" to its name. The remaining Masonic symbols on the certificate are much more familiar to the average Mason than those we have discussed. They are reminiscent of those on the diploma or certificate issued to Master Masons in England since the year 1820. The most familiar, perhaps, are the three great pillars that support Freemasons' Lodge. That on the left is the Ionic column that represents wisdom and King Solomon. In turn, the worshipful master figuratively represents them both. The Doric column on the right represents both Hiram, king of Tyre, and strength, with the senior warden representing them. The Corinthian column, representing Hiram Abiff and beauty, is in turn figuratively represented by the junior warden. On the bases of these pillars are drawings of the movable jewels with the square on the Ionic column, the level on the Doric column, and the plumb rule on the Corinthian column. These three pillars in turn stand on the black and white pavement so familiar to all and symbolize that today we may tread on the flowery meads of prosperity. Tomorrow we may totter on the uneven paths of weakness, temptation, and adversity. The pavement is approached by 3 steps representing the master's station in the lodge. The 3 degrees of masonry are the symbolic representation of old age. Standing between the 2 pillars are the rough ashlar on the left and the perfect ashlar on the right. Placed on the former are the tools required to make it perfect, namely the gavel and the chisel. The perfect ashlar has a ring set into its surface to assist in lifting it by a device known as a Lewis. If your father was a Mason, you would be known as the son of a Lewis. And in certain lodges in the United Kingdom, this would allow you to become a Mason at the age of 18 years, providing that you met the remaining normal criteria. Behind these ashlars, we note two globes, one being a celestial globe showing the stars, moon, and other celestial bodies. The other is a terrestrial globe representing the earth and all its inhabitants. These were illustrated to show the universality of Masonry. You will still notice in many lodges today that globes often surmount or top the warden's columns. Leaning against the base of the center column, we see the three great lights of Masonry: the volume of the sacred law, the square, and the compasses. The morality of each we know so well. Laid before the three great lights are the pencil and the 24-inch gauge, which are not only the tools used by the worshipful master, but tend to remind us that all our lives and actions are recorded by the great architect of the universe. Between the pillar on the left and the pillar on the right is printed the text detailing the date you were received into Masonry, advanced to the second degree, admitted to the third degree, and duly registered as a Mason on the Grand Lodge records. On the right-hand pillar, you will see the registration number of your Grand Lodge certificate. The certificate number found on the bottom of the right-hand pillar is the access number to be used to gain entrance into the members-only section of the Grand Lodge website. You may also have noticed that the dates of your being received into Masonry and the date the Grand Secretary signed the certificate are entered in two distinct manners. The first instance, the date is annotated as being in the year AD, Anno Domini, in the year of the Lord. This is the standard dating system used today. The second dating is indicated as being in the year AL, Anno Lucis, in the year of light. As we profess to believe that the origins of Freemasonry date from time immemorial, we date Masonry from the creation of man that is said to be some 4,000 years before the year of our Lord. Thus, if the date today is January 9th, 2013 AD, then the Masonic date would be January 9th, 6013. On the right-hand side of the certificate and parallel to the right-hand pillar is a gray space provided for the brother to affix his signature. This should be done upon the presentation of the certificate and at the lodge secretary's desk. You will note the Latin phrase ne veritur below the signature space. These words translate to mean not to be altered, and are meant to point out to all Masons that if the certificate appears to have been tampered with, the veracity of the brother presenting it should be questioned. At the bottom center of this document, there is a stone plaque for the Grand Secretary of the day to sign and validate the certificate. To the left of his signature is the Grand Lodge seal that is quite unique in its own right. It is composed of an outer circle on which is inscribed Grand Lodge of Ancient, Free, and Accepted Masons of Canada. You will find a full discussion of the seal and its symbolism in the book Beyond the Pillars. In brief, it indicates that we revere the great architect of the universe and the Holy of Holies in Solomon's Temple at the center of our symbolism. In the center of the coat of arms of the Grand Lodge, instead of the normal shield in the center, Grand Lodge chose to frame its centerpiece with two sprays of vegetation. Viewed on the left is an ear of corn, and on the right, a sprig of acacia. This centerpiece is divided into two halves, with the left half then being divided into quarters. The top quarter has a red background with a pair of open compasses on a silver chevron and three castles. This was the coat of arms of the moderns, the Grand Lodge of England, until 1813, and now composes the left half of the arms of the Grand Lodge of England. The lower quarter has a red background with a beaver in the foreground. The choice of the beaver to be part of Grand Lodge's seal is self-evident. The right half of the centerpiece is divided into four quadrants and contains the following symbols. The top left quadrant has a silver mason square resting on the base and the right side of the quad with a golden lion on a blue background in its center. The top right quadrant contains a green mason square, back to back with the silver one. Within the quad is a black ox walking on a gold background. The lower left quadrant again has a green mason square back to back with the upper silver square. This quad contains a man with his hands raised above his head, clothed in green with a crimson ermine robe. He is posed on a blue background. The lower right quadrant has a silver mason square back to back with a green one above it. The quad contains a golden eagle with its wings outspread on a blue background. Above the coat of arms, we see an image of the Ark of the Covenant, supported on each side by a cherubim that we recognize as a type of angel. Radiating from the seat of the ark, we see rays shining forth God's light. Above the ark, and written in Hebrew, and I'll apologize for this in advance, are the words Kodesh LeYahweh, meaning holiness to the Lord. Framing the great seal are two further cherubim, one on each side, and at their feet is a ribbon bearing the words Aude, Vidi, and Tache. This translates to read, listen, watch, and be silent. It is part of an old rhyming proverb that went, Aude, Vidi, Tache, si vis menare in pace, meaning listen, watch, be silent, if you wish to stay at peace. If you look closely, you will see that the four mason square form a cross in the center by design. The right half of the design composed of the golden eagle, the black ox, the man, and the golden lion was the arms of the Grand Lodge of the Ancients from 1764 to 1813 and forms the right half of the Grand Lodge of England, sealed to this date. These four figures, you might recall, were the four beasts of the apocalypse that were around the throne of God. Well, I hope you enjoyed this presentation, but before I go, I would like to acknowledge that this article was originally published as a Grand Lodge certificate by Right Worshipful Brother Wallace E. MacLeod in the newsletter of the Committee on Masonic Education, Volume 5, Number 1, July 1985. Updated in Reflections, Volume 19, Number 1, Summer of 2004, and further revised by Right Worshipful Brother R. Beckett and Right Worshipful Brother Robert C. McBride in Reflections, Volume 24, Number 4, Summer of 2010. I hope you enjoyed that. Have a good day.
Thank you.